The cold morning air bit into my skin as I stood by the grave, the soil freshly turned and still moist beneath my feet. The pale gray sky stretched over us, dull and unyielding, as if the heavens themselves were mourning with me. I wore my black suit, a threadbare shield for my weary heart, but even the fabric's weight could not contain the storm gathering inside. My eyes were fixed on her headstone, etched with the name I had whispered 1,000 times in nights of restless sleep: Maria, my wife, my anchor. Behind me, the soft murmur of family and friends mingled with the delicate rustling of autumn leaves. But my focus was shattered the moment I caught sight of Mallory. Her lips curved into a faint, barely perceptible smirk, a spark of something so cold, so sharp, that it froze my blood for an instant. She stood a few paces away from the mourners, her posture casual, yet every calculated detail betrayed a performance rehearsed to perfection. Tears glistened in her eyes, but not the kind born of grief. No, these were the polished tears of a practiced actress, slick and hollow. I swallowed a sudden lump in my throat, my fingers tightening into claws at my sides. How had I missed this? How had I been so blind? All these years I had trusted her, seen her as part of the family, part of the fragile future Maria and I had painstakingly built together. But now, standing in the chill of morning, it was clear. The warmth I thought she shared was a lie, the respect a mask. Mallory moved gracefully, like a ghost weaving through the sea of black coats and somber faces. She approached the cluster of relatives with step-light charm, speaking words I could only imagine were laced with the same false sympathy she broadcast for all to see. Her smile was polite but hollow, dazzling like broken glass under sunlight. I wanted to shout, to uproot this deceit right there beside Maria's resting place. But instead, my heart shattered quietly behind locked lips. I turned away, my back stiff, but my knees threatening to buckle beneath the weight of sudden betrayal and old, bitter exhaustion. Each step felt heavy, laden with memories of trust and sacrifice. I remembered the nights I labored late, the projects that consumed me, all to secure a home where they could thrive. I remembered the promises whispered in Maria's ear when she lay too weak to speak, the bills I balanced, the strength I summoned so my son and his family would never want for anything. And yet here she was, Mallory, sneering in shadows, poised to claim everything without a shred of the sweat or pain that had forged this life. But no outburst came. No angry fire cracked the brittle silence around me. Instead, I withdrew. With a dignity that felt more like a shield against the mounting storm, I slipped quietly from the graveyard, leaving behind a gathering cloud of whispers and gazes. As I walked away, the weight of betrayal settled deep in my chest, a cold stone that began to harden into something colder, more precise. The morning world watched me retreat, none aware that beneath this quiet exterior a reckoning had begun. One as methodical and relentless as the very work I had once done with my hands and mind. I would not let this go. Not now, not ever. The house greeted me with a heavy silence, one so thick it pressed against my chest like a weight. Shadows pooled in the corners, carrying memories of laughter and warmth now faded with Maria's absence. Her favorite chair sat by the window, bathed in soft morning light, untouched, an aching reminder of the life we once shared. Photographs lined the mantelpiece, Maria's serene smile, my son's eager youth, and among them, Mallory, her picture a silent emblem of the betrayal unfolding. I sank into an old armchair, the fabric worn and familiar beneath my hands. I closed my eyes, letting years of sacrifice play like a silent film behind my lids. Long nights spent balancing contracts, juggling finances, all to secure a future for this family. Every number in those ledgers told a story of quiet endurance, a promise made and kept to Maria and my son. The house, the mortgage, the college tuition, all those bricks I had labored to lay, unwavering even when my own body screamed for rest. I had carried the burden of Maria's medical bills like a silent sentinel, painstakingly paying every invoice, navigating a maze of expenses and endless worry. Each dollar was tied to a hope, a fortress around those I loved. But now those walls felt fragile, crumbling under the weight of hidden truths. Mallory had seemed at first like a breath of fresh air in this family's fraud story. Her smiles bright, her presence warm, or so I had believed. But over time, the facade cracked. That polished exterior hid ambition and entitlement, greed wrapped in false sympathy. The woman who should have stood by us had instead quietly taken what was never hers. I recalled the subtle digs, the whispered poisoning of reputation behind forced smiles. Doubts floated around me, questions about my judgment, my ability. Mallory's eyes gleamed with concealed triumph, dismissing my presence as if I were a ghost from a past she wished to erase. The realization settled deep, a cold, hard stone lodged firmly in my chest. She sought to claim without labor, to seize without honor. In the solitude of that room, I leaned on the tools of my old life, the blueprints and financial records scattered across the desk. Years spent mastering precision, strategy, planning every move to withstand pressure and prevent collapse. If I had once built bridges to carry weight safely across chasms, I would now construct a plan of my own, one that no deception could undermine. The principle was the same: identify weaknesses, anticipate strain, reinforce with knowledge and patience. The text, I traced my fingers along the faded lines of the drawings, feeling a spark of purpose reignite. This battle would not be fought with harsh words or reckless emotion. It would be a calculated dismantling of falsehoods, piece by piece. The house, imbued with years of memory, seemed to listen in quiet solidarity, its walls bearing witness to a man reborn from grief into determination. The bitter taste of coffee grounded me, the cup warming my hands as I scoured ledgers and contracts for any hint of irregularity, any concealed fissure in Mallory's claims. I thought of the complex budgets I once managed, the intertwining of figures and policies, the delicate ballet of approvals and transfers. That same scrutiny would be my weapon now. Every forged signature, every hidden account I intended to expose with the relentlessness I once reserved for engineering failures. My son's silence echoed in my thoughts. Caught between allegiance to a mother he mourned and the charm of a wife I now saw for what she was. I understood the conflict, but this was mine to bear. To protect what remained, I would carry this battle alone. Night deepened and still I sat, resolve hardening within me. I was no longer simply a grieving husband or father. I was a man reclaiming what was stolen through careful, unyielding precision. The path ahead was clear: methodical action, unshaken resolve, and the wisdom hard-won through decades. For all that I had lost, for all that had been taken, one truth remained steady. I would not allow this betrayal to stand. No hiss of anger would disrupt my calm. No rash act would undermine my cause. I would bring justice, measured and complete. In this quiet house, surrounded by shadows and echoes, I made my vow: to rebuild the walls that greed tried to knock down, to restore honor where deceit had sown discord. The fires of grief had cooled into a steady flame of purpose. This was only the beginning. The evidence came slowly at first, like the faint drip of water that hints at a flood. I suspected her long before I uncovered the proof, knew the gleam in Mallory's eyes was no accident, but the cold certainties only settled in once I held the hidden documents beneath my weary hands. These papers weren't just bureaucratic clutter. They were the key to unraveling the entire deceit she had spun so meticulously. Late one autumn evening, with a single lamp casting long shadows over my desk, I sifted through a bundle of bank statements, wills, and contract copies, some unsigned, some forged with the slickness of a practiced hand. My eyes stung from the strain, but behind that fatigue burned a fierce determination. I noticed the whisper of discrepancies, accounts reopened without consent, transfers made in the dead of night, and signatures that didn't match the flow and strength of the hand I had come to recognize over decades. One particular document was the poison's heart, a will altered quietly after Maria's passing, amending clauses without my knowledge to grant Mallory access she was never meant to have. The forgery lay in the subtle strokes of the pen, imperfect to an expert's eye, but clever enough to fool the unsuspecting. For years she'd hidden her tracks, hoping that the weight of grief would make me overlook the signs. I remembered the final insult not long before I found the documents, when Mallory openly questioned my competence at a family gathering. Her words were coded in false concern. Maybe Harold should leave these matters to those who understand. But beneath the smile was scorn, an accusation that gnawed at my already fragile pride. That day, something in me cracked. The patience I had clung to withered into resolve. No more mourning, no more silence. Armed now with the facts that confirmed my worst fears, I understood that this was a battle in which silence meant defeat. I reviewed the evidence as a seasoned engineer would inspect blueprints for flaws. Every forged signature was a stress fracture. Every fraudulent transfer, a critical weakness in the structure Mallory had built atop our legacy. I began piecing together a plan of action with the clinical precision that had once allowed me to manage massive projects successfully. The first step was to consult with trusted allies, those whose loyalty had proven unshakable over the years. I contacted Robert, an old friend and lawyer, whose sharp mind and integrity were known to me since early days in my career. He understood the stakes immediately, his voice steady as we discussed the best legal channels to challenge the falsified documents. At the same time, I reached out to James, a former colleague from my banking days, whose expertise in forensic accounting would be vital in tracing the labyrinth of financial manipulations Mallory orchestrated. Together, we pored over the tangled web she had spun. Preserve the original language of the text and irregular filings that threatened to undermine her claims. This was no simple family dispute anymore. It was a carefully engineered scheme that depended on arrogance and my supposed downfall. Mallory's confidence was her greatest weakness. She believed we could not or would not see through the layers of deceit. Her underestimation of my resolve and intellect became the foundation upon which I would dismantle her. As plans solidified, I rehearsed every step with meticulous care. Each move had to be unassailable, backed by documentation and legal precedent. There would be no room for error, no space for emotion to cloud judgment. My strategy involved a multi-layered approach: financial audits to expose irregularities, legal challenges to invalidate fraudulent claims, and public exposure to erode her standing among the family and community. The cold nights grew longer, but so did my focus. Every morning, after a brief rest, I returned to my papers with renewed clarity. I reminded myself that justice was not fueled by anger, but by unyielding commitment and strategy. The years of patience and sacrifice had forged in me a temperament suited to this challenge. I thought often of Maria during those nights, the steady presence she had been through everything. It was for her memory, for the integrity of her legacy, that I pressed forward with this plan. The son she had loved, now caught in the middle of this storm, was also in my thoughts. I hoped to protect him from further harm, even if he did not yet understand the depth of the deception we faced. Each conversation with Robert and James strengthened my conviction. Together, we identified the key vulnerabilities: fraudulent wills that could be legally contested, hidden accounts to be frozen, and the crucial task of regaining control over family properties. I listened intently, absorbing every legal nuance Robert explained, every financial anomaly James uncovered. My engineering mind adapted to this different kind of blueprint, the architecture of justice and exposure. Mallory's bluff would be called soon. Her attempts to isolate me, to paint me as a relic of a past that no longer mattered, would crumble under the weight of facts. I envisioned the moment of reckoning, when the truths I held in my hands would be laid bare before the family and the law. No more whispers behind closed doors. No more deceptions woven under the guise of grief. The cold logic I had applied for decades in my career now fueled a slow, relentless pursuit. There was no space left for second-guessing or doubt. I was prepared to endure whatever turmoil lay ahead, knowing that this battle was not simply about inheritance or pride. It was about restoring the justice that had been stolen from our family. In the quiet hours before dawn, I found a strange peace amid the storm. The gears of my mind clicked into place, each segment of the plan interlocking with the others. I was no longer the man crushed by loss and betrayal. I was a strategist, an architect of retribution, ready to reclaim what was mine with the same care and precision I once reserved for constructing bridges meant to last generations. This was not vengeance born of rage, but of truth and resolve. And with every passing day, I moved closer to unveiling the full extent of Mallory's treachery, and to restoring the integrity of a family she had so blatantly betrayed. The afternoon sun filtered through the dust-speckled window, casting long slivers of light across the cluttered desk where I sat surrounded by the weight of years and the remnants of a life painstakingly built. The blueprints and financial records lay before me, each page a thread in the tapestry of truth I sought to unravel. I drank the cold coffee turned bitter with time and focus, my mind reliving every moment that had brought me to this point. As I examined the estate documents once held sacred in Maria's meticulous hands, I saw the cracks hidden beneath the ornate legal language. Years of manipulation masked in lines of ink and forged signatures that Mallory had orchestrated with the stealth of a practiced deceiver. The very papers meant to protect my family's legacy had become a battleground, and I was determined to reclaim every inch with the precision of a structural engineer scrutinizing a bridge for fatigue and failure. Maria had always been thorough. Every piece of paper was a testament to her care and foresight. Yet, even the best walls have cracks that go unnoticed until someone exploits them. Mallory had taken advantage of my mourning, of my withdrawn grief, and had begun weaving a web that threatened to choke the future Maria and I envisioned. But I would not let her tighten those threads any further. The first step was enlisting the aid of trusted allies. Robert, an old friend and lawyer who had once defended me in a bitter contract negotiation, was my key to understanding how to attack these legal fortresses. He examined the documents with practiced eyes, nodding at the falsified clauses and unauthorized amendments that could serve as anchors for our counterattack. "These filings," he said quietly, "are more than sloppy work. They're deliberate attempts to circumvent the law. We have strong grounds to challenge this." Next was James, my old colleague from banking, a man fluent in the language of numbers and financial subterfuge. Together, we ran through transactions and account statements, methodically tracing the money flows that had been concealed like oil stains beneath a polished floor. "See here," James pointed to irregular transfers and accounts opened in shadow, "this is deliberate misdirection. She's funneling assets through layers to avoid detection." It was a web designed to disguise, to confuse, and to discourage confrontation. But I was no stranger to complexity. For decades, I had navigated the tangled mazes of contracts, budgets, and projects susceptible to collapse without careful oversight. Now, I would use those same capabilities to dismantle Mallory's schemes. From my analysis emerged a blueprint for a comprehensive, phased strategy, one built not on impulse but on precision and relentless patience. Step 1. Initiate financial audits to bring hidden accounts and irregular filings into the light. I would coordinate with James to alert banks and authorities, freezing assets and slowing the flow of money to force Mallory's hand. Step 2. mount legal challenges against the forged wills and unauthorized amendments, leveraging Robert's expertise to invalidate fraudulent claims and regain rightful control over the estate. But the strategy extended beyond paper and courts. Mallory's greatest weakness was her smug confidence, an arrogance bred from believing I was broken, aging, and impotent. I would expose that facade. I would orchestrate a subtle public campaign, quiet, surgical, the kind of erosion that social pressure can bring, causing cracks in her reputation among family and friends. Rumors would be examined, discrepancies whispered, suspicions stoked. The social circle that once tiptoed around the issue would slowly turn as the truth emerged. Every move had to be impeccable. No rush, no errors. Every step was a calculated measure in a long game. I would use my familiarity with legal, financial, and social systems as my scaffolding, raising a structure even more resilient than the one Mallory sought to destroy. Days melted into weeks as I worked through the estate's tangled affairs, poring over files and drafts late into the night under the intermittent glow of a desk lamp. Each document uncovered added weight to the mounting case, a forged signature here, a suspicious transfer there. The deeper we dug, the clearer the pattern became. Mallory's greed was pervasive, and her deception bordered on criminal. One evening, Robert laid a folder on the desk, sliding it toward me with a look of grim satisfaction. "This is the smoking gun," he said. "A document she tried to suppress. An amended will, backdated and signed in a way that doesn't hold up under scrutiny. If this comes to light, it will unravel everything she's built." I studied the pages, the forgery evident in the uneven strokes and inconsistent ink. The file was a damning piece of the puzzle, and I felt a distant pang. How could a person so close, once considered family, betray so thoroughly? But I set aside emotion. Justice required clear eyes and steady hands. Meanwhile, James reported progress in tracing illicit transfers to obscure offshore accounts and shell corporations. "It's a web too tangled for most to follow," he explained. "But with a little patience, the trail is unmistakable." His report gave me the tools to petition financial institutions for account freezes and investigations into money laundering. I recalled the promise I had made to Maria years earlier to protect her legacy, to provide for our family no matter the cost. That promise had never wavered. It only strengthened as I confronted the magnitude of Mallory's betrayal. I sent messages to Robert and James with meticulous precision, coordinating interviews with witnesses and lining up financial audits. Each piece of the puzzle had to fit perfectly. We could not afford loose ends. The complexity was near overwhelming, yet within that, a strange calm settled over me. My background as an engineer, trained to analyze, calculate, and plan, became my refuge and advantage. I thought of the buildings I had once designed, monuments to endurance and safety, now mirrored in the fortress of evidence and strategy I was assembling to protect my family. Sometimes, fatigue threatened to break in. Nights when grief and exhaustion mingled and my thoughts veered toward despair. Yet those moments passed quickly, replaced by resolve deeper than I had known I possessed. Maria's memory, my family's future, demanded it. At times, I thought of my son, caught between loyalty to his mother's memory and his wife's villainous grasp. He remained silent, unsure, perhaps trying to understand the storm brewing beneath the calm facade. I hoped he would come to see the truth before it was too late, but I also understood this was a trial I had to endure for all of us. As the days turned into a calculated march forward, I began setting subtle traps, moves designed to provoke errors from Mallory, to force her hand when she least expected it. I blocked payments to unknown accounts, alerted banks of suspicious activity, and quietly observed her reactions through mutual contacts and family networks. Panic flickered in her eyes the first time she realized her control was slipping. That flicker gave me a small measure of satisfaction. The reckoning had begun. Each confrontation, whether direct or through legal channels, I met with calm, unwavering composure. There was no need for bitterness or loud accusations. Facts, evidence, and the weight of truth were the weapons I wielded. Mallory's facade could not withstand the scrutiny. Her carefully curated image was crumbling under the relentless light of exposure. The social landscape shifted imperceptibly but inevitably. Whispers grew louder, sympathies rebalanced. Former allies distanced themselves. Those who once turned a blind eye hesitated in face of mounting proof. The family circle, once tangled loyalties and doubts, began to align behind me. By the time I called the family meeting, I was poised and confident, holding irrefutable evidence in hand. The documents I would reveal were not just pieces of law or numbers. They were the testament to years of betrayal, the unspoken narratives Mallory had tried desperately to bury. In that room, with the family present, I would lay bare the full extent of her deception. No dramatics, no venom, just truth, a structure strong enough to withstand the lies, built on the careful analysis of fact and the unshakable foundation of justice. Looking back now, I realize each careful step, from quiet nights sifting through files to delicate conversations with those I trusted, had forged a path toward redemption. I was no longer a man overwhelmed by betrayal, but an architect of reckoning, poised to restore not just property or money, but the honor and dignity Maria had deserved. The plan was set. The pieces were in place. All that remained was execution. The taste of anticipation was thick in the air as I prepared for the first move in the campaign I had so meticulously assembled. For months, I had lived in the quiet shadows, piecing together evidence, building strategies, and coordinating with those I trusted most. Now, the plan I had crafted with the precision of an engineer was ready to be set in motion. The inevitability of it all settled in my bones. This was no longer a private mourning, but a calculated battle for justice. My initial action was subtle but deliberate, reversing unauthorized financial transactions. The accounts where Mallory siphoned funds were carefully entwined in layers of obfuscation, designed to mask their true destinations. But with the collaboration of trusted banking contacts, I flagged irregular transfers, froze illicit accounts, and alerted authorities to suspicious activities. Each frozen transfer was a small victory, a fracture appearing in the facade Mallory had so carefully constructed. I remember watching her reaction through the grapevine of family friends and mutual acquaintances. Panic flashed in her eyes the first time she realized those invisible rails of control were slipping from her grasp. That flicker of fear was a grim satisfaction, a silent acknowledgement that my carefully laid nets were beginning to close. Confrontations were inevitable, but I met each with calm, measured composure. There was no need for vehement accusations or shouting matches. Anger breeds chaos and weakens resolve. Instead, I relied on facts as my weapons, letting the weight of irrefutable evidence erode her evasions. With every pointed question, Mallory deflected, and every falsehood I exposed, her once impenetrable exterior began to crumble. In one tense encounter, she confronted me, her voice brittle, tinged with desperation that only intensified the gravity of her deceit. "You really think you can undo this? You're clinging to a past that's gone, Harold." I met her gaze, steady and unyielding. "This isn't about the past anymore. It's about what's rightfully ours." Her frustration was palpable, and in that moment I understood the depth of her desperation, how far she would fall to maintain power she had unlawfully claimed. Each tense exchange became an opportunity, a chance to glean further insight into her operations and to catch her in inconsistencies that would later anchor our case. Meanwhile, the whispers began. Friends, neighbors, distant relatives, those once blinded by sympathy or intimidated by Mallory's facade, started speaking in hushed tones. Questions arose in quiet circles, and doubts that had lingered under the surface began to surface. The social landscape was shifting imperceptibly but relentlessly against her. Former allies cautiously distanced themselves, wary of indebting their reputations to a cause tarnished by deceit. Those who once tolerated her manipulations now hesitated, their silence replaced by a growing unease. The family circle, long fractured by loyalties split and secrets kept, began to coalesce around the truth I presented, their support slowly crystallizing. I observed these changes with a keen eye, recognizing the shift not just as triumph, but as a reflection of the power of truth and patience. Throughout it all, I maintained an aura of steady authority, the quiet strength of a man not consumed by bitterness but driven by purpose. This constancy only magnified the cracks appearing in Mallory's image. Behind closed doors, I continued to work tirelessly with my legal team and financial experts. Every action taken against Mallory's claims was supported by exhaustive research, unassailable evidence meticulously gathered to withstand scrutiny. The process was slow, grueling, and at times exhausting, but it was deliberate and precise. I could not allow a single misstep. With so much at stake, the integrity of our case was paramount. I coordinated audits, arranged for expert witnesses, and drew upon the full extent of my team's expertise. Each piece of evidence was a brick in the wall I was building against Mallory's attempts to rewrite our family story. Then came the day I had both dreaded and anticipated, the family meeting. I chose the room with care, the same space where we had celebrated milestones and shared countless hours. The walls bore silent testimony to a history that was about to be re-examined in the harsh light of truth. As relatives arrived, I watched their faces, some guarded, some hopeful, others burdened by uncertainty. Mallory entered with composure still intact, but the nervous glances she cast betrayed the storm beneath her calm exterior. I stood before them all, steadfast and prepared. With deliberate calm, I began to reveal the facts, unfolding years of betrayal with clarity and precision. The documents spread before me were not mere papers. They were the embodiment of deceit, forged signatures, illicit transfers, and altered wills, each one a testament to the calculated manipulation that had threatened to dismantle the legacy Maria and I had built. I read aloud from bank statements that traced the flow of funds designed to bypass rightful heirs, pointing to the shell companies that hid the truth in plain sight. I detailed the forged wills, exposing the fraud beneath the polished surface. I shared testimonies from witnesses who had come forward, their voices carrying the weight of truth. Video analyses underscored patterns of deception, and legal experts affirmed the strength of the case. Throughout the presentation, Mallory's confident mask faltered. I saw the tightening of her jaw, the flicker of doubt in her eyes. Her attempts to interject were met with gentle but firm resistance. This was not a platform for personal attacks, but a stage for undeniable truth. The family members, once divided and uncertain, had their perspectives irrevocably changed. Shock gave way to disbelief, then to sorrow, and finally to a resolute recognition of the betrayal they had been blind to or complicit in. Sympathy that had been misplaced shifted decisively, swaying the balance toward justice. In the aftermath, Mallory's claims were formally invalidated. Her access to the estate's resources was severed, and legal channels ensured that her manipulation could not continue. The family's dignity, tarnished by treachery but ultimately preserved, became a beacon of resilience. Despite the magnitude of the victory, I felt no exhilaration. The cost had been high, the wounds deep. I thought of my son, trapped in the torment of divided loyalties. I hoped that this revelation would bring clarity and healing, but I knew the path ahead would still be long. Walking away from that day's proceedings, I carried with me not triumph, but a quiet fulfillment. The battle had been fought with intellect, patience, and an unwavering commitment to truth. The Maria's memory was honored through justice, not vengeance, and the legacy we built was protected. The echoes of the past lingered, a solemn reminder that trust, once broken, demands vigilance to rebuild. But in that moment, surrounded by family and truth, I found a hard-earned peace, a testament to the strength born of endurance and the power of unwavering resolve. The weight of that day did not lift from me as quickly as I might have imagined. Walking away from the family meeting, the echoes of voices, the shuffled documents, and the tightening expressions of those present lingered in my mind long after the room fell silent. The victory I had painstakingly engineered was solid, undeniable, yet it was not accompanied by the rush of triumph or celebration I had expected. Instead, a profound quiet settled within me, a heavy mixture of relief, exhaustion, and the sobering realization of the cost exacted by truth. Preserve the original language of the text had crumbled like a brittle facade under the relentless light of scrutiny. The forged wills, the hidden accounts, the falsified signatures, everything was laid bare for the family, friends, and legal authorities to see. The careful tapestry of deceit she had woven unraveled swiftly, strands pulled free by facts and evidence that resisted any attempt at denial. I noticed the flicker of doubt and fear in her eyes during the presentation, a stark contrast to the confident mask she had worn for so long. That vulnerability was a silent admission, the quietest acknowledgement of defeat. The room held a charged atmosphere during those moments. Family members, previously divided and uncertain, were visibly shaken by the revelations. Shock coursed through many, echoed by whispered disbelief. Some wrestled with the implications, grappling with sorrow as harsh truths corrected years of misplaced trust or willful blindness. Yet, as those initial waves passed, a resolute recognition emerged, a collective awakening to the betrayal that had been hidden in plain sight. Sympathy, so long bestowed upon Mallory, shifted with quiet force towards me, the man who had stood steadfast in the face of adultery and greed, who had endured loss and heartbreak without surrendering to bitterness. Their trust, once shaken, began to realign with the integrity that Maria and I had tried so hard to protect. Legally, the consequences were swift and significant. Mallory was cut off from access to the estate's resources, her claims dismissed and invalidated by the courts with clear justification. Protective measures were put in place to prevent any further manipulation or attempts to regain control. The estate, our family's legacy, was safeguarded, not just as property or wealth, but as a symbol of enduring values and hard-won justice. Yet, amid this decisive victory, elation eluded me. The wounds inflicted by betrayal were still raw beneath the surface. Nights were often spent gazing out the window at fading light and the slow unfolding of darkness. These quiet hours were filled with reflection on the long path from grief and anger to the cool clarity of justice, the tangled emotions that accompanied it, and the fragile hope budding in the wake of truth. Each breath I took carried the weight of sacrifice and the determination to protect what remained. In the aftermath, I found myself stepping into a role deeper and more complex than I had expected, the guardian not just of assets, but of trust and family. The work of rebuilding began slowly, conversations unfolding with tentative sincerity, old wounds touched by a cautious healing. I listened and learned, offering patience and understanding where judgment once threatened. The legacy Maria entrusted to me was no longer merely a physical inheritance, but a living testament to perseverance and principled resolve. The trials taught me much about human nature, the dual capacities for betrayal and redemption, the fragile balance of trust amidst ambition and despair. I learned that justice, while essential, is but a foundation for healing, requiring compassion and time to restore what had been broken. Family gatherings became quieter, tinged with the weight of memory, but also with sparks of something new, hope cautiously nurtured amid the shadows. The rebuilding of bonds was tentative but visible. Shared stories and small gestures began to stitch the frayed fabric back together.
In this delicate rebuilding, I often found strength in Maria's memory. Her steady kindness, her quiet sacrifices became the compass guiding me through the uncertain terrain. I imagined her presence, a gentle force sustaining me, reminding me of the dignity and love that must underpin the future we shape together. I reflected on the paradox of strength found in vulnerability, the acknowledgement of pain, yet the refusal to be defined or defeated by it. This understanding became the bedrock of the new chapter unfolding. As days passed, I embraced the uncertainty of what lay ahead, grounded in a resolve forged from hardship and tempered by hope. The path was uncharted, but I was not alone. Family, though altered, remained connected by shared history and the possibility of renewal. In the quiet of evening, as twilight faded into night, I stood by the window watching shadows stretch and fade. The world beyond was vast and unknowable, yet I felt at last a measure of peace, a hard-earned calm born from endurance, truth, and the enduring power of justice. This peace was a subtle victory, a testament not to the absence of pain, but to the strength to overcome it, to rebuild, and to hold fast to the promise of tomorrow. The days grew quieter, and the house settled into a gentle rhythm that both comforted and challenged me. Each room held 1,000 memories of laughter, preserved conversations, and quiet moments shared with Maria. Now, those memories carried the weight of loss, but also the promise of renewal. As I moved through the familiar spaces, I felt her presence in the soft light falling across the worn wooden floors, in the faded curtains that fluttered ever so slightly with the evening breeze. This house was more than a shelter. It was a testament to years of sacrifice and love, a living chronicle of our family. Though the ordeal was over, the work of healing was just beginning. Trust, once shattered, could not be rebuilt overnight. I saw it in the cautious eyes of my son, in the hesitant words exchanged during family gatherings, and in the silence that lingered where easy conversations once flourished. The fractures left by betrayal ran deep, but with each small step, each shared meal, each quiet moment of understanding, the threads of connection began to weave back together. There was no hurry, no grand gestures. Healing was a slow, deliberate process requiring patience and grace. In these moments, I often found myself turning inward, seeking strength from the memory of Maria. Her quiet resilience, her unwavering kindness in the face of hardship became a compass guiding me through the uncertainty ahead. I pictured her sitting beside me, a gentle hand on my shoulder, reminding me that dignity and love are the foundations upon which families endure. Her spirit was a steady flame, illuminating the path as I navigated the complexities of loss, forgiveness, and renewal. The paradox of strength found in vulnerability became clearer with each passing day. Acknowledging pain did not weaken me, rather it fortified my resolve not to be defined by sorrow or betrayal. Embracing that truth became the bedrock upon which I began to construct this new chapter, not just for myself, but for those I loved. I realized that resilience was not about erasing the past, but learning to carry it with grace, allowing it to shape but not shackle the future. The road ahead was uncharted, stretched with challenges both expected and unforeseen. Yet I was not alone. Though altered by hardship, the family remained bound by shared history and the possibility of renewal. Slowly, hope took root. Fragile at first, but growing stronger with every act of forgiveness and every effort toward understanding. The house, once heavy with silence and tension, began to fill with the tentative sounds of reconnecting lives. Muted laughter, the soft murmur of conversations, the occasional clink of glasses toasted to a cautious future. In the quiet of evening, as twilight softened the edges of the world outside, I often stood by the window, watching as shadows stretched and faded into the darkness. The vastness beyond reminded me of life's uncertainties, the paths not yet taken, the unknowns that lay ahead. And yet, in that stillness, I found something profoundly comforting. A hard-earned peace born from years of endurance and the relentless pursuit of truth. That peace was not a triumphant roar, but a subtle victory. It did not erase the pain, but transformed it into a wellspring of strength, a resolve to rebuild what was broken and to hold fast to the promise of tomorrow. It was a reminder that while the past shaped us, it does not have to imprison us. That through courage, patience, and love, healing is possible. The legacy Maria left me was not just the house, the money, or the tangible possessions we fought to protect. It was the deeper inheritance of integrity, of standing firm in the face of adversity, and of honoring family by seeking justice tempered with compassion. In protecting that legacy, I found renewal, not just for the family, but for myself. Looking back on the journey, I understood that the greatest victories are often quiet and personal. The battles fought in boardrooms, courtrooms, and family meetings are but a part of the story. The true triumph lies in the courage to face betrayal without losing one's humanity, to extend forgiveness where possible, and to rebuild with unwavering hope. As I closed my eyes on many nights, I pictured Maria's smile, the calm strength that had sustained us through stormier times. I whispered a promise to her memory, that I would continue to protect the family and the values she cherished, that I would carry forward not just what she left behind, but the spirit that made us whole. Justice had been served, but more importantly, dignity was restored. The journey was far from over, but I was ready to face whatever came next, with a steady heart, clear purpose, and the consciousness that true inheritance is the legacy we live each day.